Now, you write about TV a lot, but this book is on reality TV. I loved it. What made you decide that this was the next book, was to focus entirely on the history of reality TV?
Well, one thing about this book, and I talk about this a little bit at the beginning, is that I initially thought about writing this book in 2003, before actually I was a television critic, at a time that I was a freelance writer, and I was just thinking with a bunch of friends about possible book ideas. And it was right at the beginning of the turn of the century reality boom. And I'd watched a shocking amount of The Real World. And I had also gotten into the first season of Big Brother, which was streaming online, which was a radical, nerdy, weird, new thing. I mean, the internet was very young, and I was streaming streams from the Big Brother house into the corner of my screen. So in order to justify this extremely embarrassing habit, I had this idea that I would go to LA and write a nonfiction book about the reality TV boom, basically. And I told this to a friend of mine, and he said very snottily, "You better write that fast." And the idea was, this is a fad. If you try to write a book about this, it will be gone by the time it's published. And I sort of listened to him on that. But 20 years later, obviously he was wrong. It was not a fad. But by the time I got around to writing it, reality television was an established industry. And I pitched it as part of a 2-book deal that I made, where I first published an anthology of my criticism, and they wanted a nonfiction book as well. So this was an old idea that I repitched. And at the time I repitched it, honestly, I did not know how far it would go back. And I think I thought what I thought around 2003, which is that it probably went back to The Real World in 1992. But once I started researching, I realized how deep the roots of the genre were. And as for the question of why I wanted to write about it, I wanted to write about it because whether people love or hate reality TV, and I've talked to many people who it's a very divided response to the subject of the book, there's no denying its importance. And it's a really uncovered story. And this is an origin story. It's not criticism. It's a nonfiction reported book where I did like 300 interviews with people. And, it's about essentially where this came from and how it moved to the center of the culture, to the point that it affected people's personal relationships, their sense of identity. It elected a president. And it's about the early part of that story. It runs from 1947 to around 2009. So it traces the creation of the reality genre.